Hey, Matt Wheeler, it's so great to see you.
It's good to see you too.
So, what do you have for us today?
Um, it's funny. I've got several thoughts. Should I start with my socks though?
Please do. Sorry, I literally ran in the door. I was out seeing a CSAT friend, and
Oh, were you?
I'm in Seattle, and I had the opportunity, and it
Oh,
was this was the only time we could connect. And I was like, I have to get back, and so I came flying in the door. And so, yes, I plugged my computer in, and I'm ready. But that was about it. So,
well, it was
show me
funny
your socks.
because I actually it was funny. Like it was struggling to get me on and it hit
Oh,
2:30 and I'm like, ooh, Tammy's probably nervous. Um, but hey, we're all figuring this out. Okay, so I
yes.
don't think I've shown these before and I have to take them off of
Oh,
it.
perfect. Yeah.
These are like,
Um,
I think, what are they, bass?
My
Bass?
husband and son could tell you because like he's a pro fisherman, my son, and he ties flies and things like he
Like
would
actually a
he would
pro
know.
fisherman? Like he makes money off of it?
He has a podcast about his, yeah, so yes.
Good
I know
for
some
him.
fly tying things that I would not otherwise know. So he's a big
Oh,
fly fisherman now. That
that's
so but
hilarious.
they would absolutely be able to, I'm looking at it, I'm going like it looks like a largemouth bass, but what do I know? So yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, well, and it's it's a cartoonish one. I mean, it's but no, I thought they were fun. So these are my
it
fish socks
is.
for today.
There you go.
In fact, I'll put my little plug in there. If anybody wants to see more of my fun socks, I've got the shoeless therapist at on Instagram. That's my little tagline on Instagram. So you can go follow me there and I put out little videos that are little tidbits.
There you
But
go.
yeah, but it's been actually a fun little project for me to record these little minute and a half videos of like hey, here's a concept I want you guys to think about. But and then I get
I'm
on
gonna
here and we have
I'm
a big
yeah,
discussion.
but I'm gonna invite you to add that to your bio that's on our website.
Oh,
Just a
really?
thought. Yeah, send me the information specifically so I can pass it on or send it to Scott. We're doing this and it's being recorded. So there you go. But yeah,
Yeah.
on your
No,
bio, it
that's a
would
great
be
idea.
smart to have that included so people can find it easily on the point your finger up seekingintegrity.com site. So
No, that's awesome. All right, I'll send it over. Okay. So to be honest, it's funny. I don't exactly remember what I shared for my intro last time, but and so I might be sharing the same thing again, but it's been on my mind so much lately because it's an empathy skill. So I'm going to go into this again. Um, there and I don't have the perfect words for it, but one of the most important things, so you guys have heard me say this before, if the best way to ruin your relationship is to tell lies. And that's why like I've had people where if you tell the truth, you can recover from almost anything. I mean, I've seen people recover from the most phenomenal damage because they were willing to open up and be honest. And so I always teach people like lying is the most damaging thing you can do. Not an affair. Lying about the affair is more damaging than the affair itself, right? And so, but as I've gained a better understanding of like accountability, and you're going to hear that a lot in recovery, accountability, accountability, accountability. I've tried to teach that there are times where we have over accountability and we have under accountability. So someone's struggling with like internal toxic shame. And internal toxic shame is this belief in myself that I am unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm broken, something's wrong with me, right? They believe about themselves that they are fundamentally flawed and therefore not worthy of love and belonging. Um, Somebody who feels that way about themselves is often over accountable. Everything's my fault. I'm so sorry. If I were better, none of these problems would exist, right? And so whether you're like a betrayed partner, whether you're struggling with an addiction, any of us can struggle with being over accountable, and it's oftentimes because we just think we're a bad person or unworthy of love. So then you have under accountable people oftentimes maybe don't have so much internal toxic shame. They have what I'm going to refer to as external toxic shame. External is the toxic shame where, I believe that my spouse believes that I'm unworthy of love. I believe other people around me believe that I'm unworthy of love. So it's this belief that I have that they don't think that I'm lovable. So now I'm going to be under accountable, and I'm going to be defensive, and I'm going to not, I'm going to try and figure out all the reasons that this is not my fault. And, you're blaming me. Now, we can struggle with both. And I'm just using some examples of possible behavior that goes on. And so it's not going to be exact, but I just wanted to throw it out there as something to think about. But it led me to when we talk about accountability, sometimes accountability isn't owning that I did this thing. Let's say I acted out with a coworker, or I relapsed with drugs, whatever it is, and I did it because I wanted to hurt you, right? Like a lot of times we try to figure out, why would my partner do this? Do they not love me? Were they angry at me? And it's like, most of the time it has nothing to do with you. They're just an unhealthy person and haven't figured out how to lead a healthy life. And so being accountable isn't owning the intention that your spouse or somebody else is putting on you. It's actually oftentimes owning the impact. And so if my spouse says to me, you acted out and it's because you don't love me, I would say, I realize that my acting out makes it feel like I don't love you. And I don't blame you for that, right? When I act out with somebody else, or when I act out with alcohol or drugs or pornography or whatever, you are going to feel like I don't love you. I don't want our relationship to work, because naturally I'm doing something that harms our relationship. And so I don't blame you for feeling that way. However, those may not be my intentions, but I know that my behavior impacts you that way. So I'm owning the impact, not owning the intention that you are putting on my behavior. Sometimes a partner doesn't look like they're being accountable because they're arguing about the intention. No, I didn't do that. I didn't do it because of what you said. And now it looks like you're not being accountable. And in some ways you aren't being accountable. Own your impact. Worry less about the intentions. We'll get there eventually. A lot of times you don't even know what your intentions are. In fact, as a partner, if you're asking your partner about why they did something, you have to understand that a lot of times they don't even know. So ask them about what they did. Ask them about how do they think it made you feel, rather than telling them that they did this on purpose, or they did it for a certain reason. You could ask them, did you do it to hurt me? And they might say, I knew it would hurt you, but in that moment, I wasn't thinking about you, obviously, or I did do it to hurt you. And they can say that. If you did it to hurt them, tell them. Let's be honest about it. So I guess what was really coming up in my mind is this idea of accountability doesn't mean you have to be over accountable or under accountable. Focus on understanding that though my behavior may impact you, it may not be for the intents and purposes that you may have thought, or that I even thought, for that matter. So, Tammy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have a question for you. Like, if
Sure.
somebody do they have a tendency to have mostly one pattern or the other, or could it be situational or with certain people? Like, I'm going to be overly this way and underly this way. Like, I'm just curious, do you see that in people?
So I don't have any research, right? But my gut is yes. Like one person, as I'm feeling out a person when I'm doing like couples therapy, I'm feeling out what is their typical pattern. And that person will generally follow that pattern given any similar circumstance, and the other person will generally follow their pattern. But it doesn't mean that there aren't people who can switch back and forth. And I've seen it, but I would say my gut says that generally we follow a pattern. Like, I know for me growing up, because I was afraid of consequences, I was afraid of getting in trouble. My pattern was quickly to try and figure out, like, how do I figure out whose fault it is, that it's not mine? I can blame somebody else. Because I didn't want to face the reality of the choice that I made. And so I know even as an adult, things will happen and I'll feel my brain go that direction. And I have to go, no, hold on. I need to own my part. This is what growing up looks like. And so it's like, okay, what's my part in this? What's my impact? I don't have to own somebody else's unhealthy choice, right? Like, people will often say, sorry, now I'm getting off on a tangent, but people will often say, you did this thing and it's your fault. And I'll say, I did this thing, but then you chose to do that as a result. I can't own what you chose to do. So, but yes, I think we generally have a pattern. I have seen some people that can do both very well.
Interesting. And I was thinking, I find why to be, especially early on in the process, pretty unhelpful. I mean, because lots of people know why and they keep acting out. So understanding, what do we do from here? How do we move forward? What were you thinking in the moment, and not what were you thinking? Like, I'm curious, what was happening for you? So then you're doing more of a dissection of, like, this is, so we can see what's going on and then maybe intervene. The term autopsy on a relapse, like I mean, that's very real to me. It's like, I'm going to look at what happened, just like CSI. I'm going to kind of figure out, like, what was happening, before this event happened, so that we can kind of, figure out and then have a plan for the next time.
Yep.
Okay, so first question. We are a month after therapeutic disclosure. I'm assuming formal with therapists, but that's an assumption, and working with individual therapists. When is a good time to add couples counseling?
Great question. First, though, I can't remember, Tammy, did we have questions left over from the last time?
Oh, I'll go look. Good
idea.
idea.
Go
Okay.
look, but because I thought that we
go.
had some leftover questions, but I could be wrong. Okay, so to answer this question, when is a good time to add in couples counseling? So I'll make it as simple as I possibly can. If you're ready right now, let me try and describe what ready looks like. So I'll have a situation where I'll have a couple come in, and I can tell that both of them are really dysregulated, and I'll try and describe what that looks like. But they'll sit down on my couch, and if over a couple of sessions I can't get them to regulate, such as learning to hear each other, if I can't get them to hear me, and I'm not afraid of conflict. I will watch couples fight all the time, and it actually can be very helpful. As I'm watching them fight, I can pause them. Hey, pause there. Let's look at what's happening. And if they can pause and walk through it with me, that's fine. They can fight. I can help them figure out how to change the dynamic. And that type of a couple, it's fine. But when, let's say you're a month after therapeutic disclosure, and let's say you both tend to be withdrawers, there's not a lot of fighting going on. Oftentimes I'll say jump right into couples therapy, because if there's not a lot of conflict, the truth is a couples therapist can help you guys figure out what conflict is happening that you guys aren't addressing. If you both are pursuers and it's pretty heated, sometimes I will say, hey, let's pause this. Let's teach you guys some regulation tools and techniques so that you can have a discussion without both of you or even just one of you exploding. And so that's kind of a weird way for me to explain that there are times where I will say jump into couples therapy right away. It's very helpful. And there's other times where I'll say, hey, we need to do some regulation work to help you stay, it's not calm, but to de-escalate enough, to regulate enough that the couples therapy can be actually effective. So what I would do if I were you is, if this didn't help, I would actually find a couples therapist. I'd ask people in your area who's a good one. And then I would go and say, hey, we're interested in doing couples therapy. We want to know if you feel like we're ready or if we need to wait a little longer in recovery. Sometimes it's good to wait. Sometimes it's good to start right away. Hopefully that gives you some. And the other issue is, if you have a partner who's actively acting out, there's only so much couples therapy that typically can work because they're still fragmenting their attachment. Now, if they're having a slip once in a while, I mean, even a slip once a week, a slip, and I'm just making up numbers because it totally depends on the couple. But if they're slipping every day, or slipping and not telling you the truth about it, right? There's only so far you can get in couples therapy because they're not being honest. And so that's another thing we have to take into consideration. There's times I've said, hey, you can't do couples therapy because you're not in a space to be honest about what's going on, even though it's going to hurt your partner. And I've had a lot of people say, I know if I'm honest, it's going to hurt them. And I say, okay, good. Then I want you to hurt them. I want you to love them so much you're willing to hurt them. And when they commit and are able to show me that over time they'll do that, then couples therapy, again, can still be very effective. You're on mute.
Thank you. I didn't find any other questions and I found other things. So I don't think we had any left over. I think we got
okay,
them.
cool.
So I was thinking it would be really interesting to ask your individual therapists about this. And I often share, Matt said, get some recommendations. I think the individual therapists may be best. They know each of you and they may have a couples therapist that they work well with. And ideally, there's the ability to have releases so that, this is what we're seeing in couples therapy. Each individually could be working towards this, that type of thing. So that can be a good thing. I have had a number of people find that working with both of their individual therapists on an occasional basis for kind of a couples session, but then both of them are there, that can work too. So I think I would start with your individual therapist and see what their insights are, because they've helped guide you through the formal therapeutic disclosure. So, but yes, I get people all the time that are going, we're in a crisis. We need a couples therapist. And I always do the same thing, back it down. I'm going like, if you're not working with individual therapists, that would be the place to start. If you are, then talk to them and see it, if the timing is ready. Somebody used an analogy and I wish I could remember who it was because I really want to give them credit. I do. And, but they said going to couples therapy when one person is still in active addiction and still lying is like rowing a boat with one oar. You're paddling like I always say the betrayed partner is paddling like crazy and you're going in circles, because only one oar is in. So it's really one of those things where if the coupleship is the client, for couples therapy, then that person is framed into working with the coupleship, not either of you. So there's a lot of nuances to this. There's a lot of nuances to this work. So when you're working with a qualified therapist that's had the training, that helps things move forward differently. I hope you've had some relief with having the formal therapeutic disclosure passed. It doesn't mean everything's going to be fabulous and wonderful from here on out, but hopefully you've got that foundation, that you can build on and move forward with. So, okay, next question. My SA husband of 42 years has been doing all the recommended recovery work for the past 2 years since discovery and formal therapeutic disclosure. But twice now he has been caught in lies of omission. They're not sexual acting out lies, but things like not taking the most direct route home from therapy, etc. How do we build trust back in our relationship again? Every time I think we're making progress, it feels like I get knocked back down. Wow, I feel the hurt.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. Well, first of all, I would argue there's a couple things here. One thing that came to my mind was it sounds like that you and him have made a lot of progress. And so I struggle because it's this idea, I almost hear you saying that we aren't going to have steps back. And I would say that I think it's actually pretty normal to have steps back. Like, and that doesn't mean that we're starting over. It's frustrating, it's disappointing, it's hurtful, right? So I'm not trying to diminish his behavior, but if there's a way for you to say, oh, I guess there's a learning opportunity here, right? Like, oh, like I love how Tammy just said, an autopsy of a relapse. Like, let's do an autopsy of this lying and omission. Let's figure out what this is about, because maybe this gives us insight into his psyche, and like and let's find out, like, was there any fear going on? Like and so you're not sharing out of fear. If so, how often does that fear come up? Help me understand where that fear comes from. So I think it's really helpful. Like, I don't think his lies are good at all, right? Like you heard me say in the very beginning today, lies will hurt the relationship more than anything else. And so, but I would start focusing on, let's do an autobiography or an autopsy on lying. Like, let's look at your whole life. If I were you as the spouse, I'd do the same thing. Let's look at lying in my life, and where have people lied to me? Where have I lied to other people? Why is lying so painful? And let's start having conversations as a couple about what our histories of lying and being lied to looks like, what kind of pain it brings up. But building trust back up in the relationship, I think you do that by having some of these conversations that I'm suggesting, by maybe even having a conversation like, as a couple, can we consider a lie a slip for the relationship? So if there's a slip, let's follow the same rules. 12 hours check-in. If there's a slip of lying, then one of us has to come to the other person and say, hey, I slipped up. I lied about something. I felt like it was harmless, but I realized that it breaks our rule in the relationship. And I think lying can be, hey, I managed your emotions. I didn't quite tell you the full truth on something because I thought you'd be upset. I was managing your emotions, and I know that that's not healthy. Have that conversation, and maybe that's something you guys check in with each other. And I think that honestly could probably go both ways, right? Like, anytime you feel like you're managing his emotions, trying to say it just right so he's not upset, like, just be honest. Hey, I'm trying to manage your emotions, and I know that doesn't go well. So I think those things could help build trust. Let me know what you think, and if you have any other questions, hit me up on it. Let's talk about it some more. Tammy, what are your thoughts?
I was thinking, because like I would think as a therapist, if he's getting churned up in therapy, I'm sure that's a formal therapeutic term, is churned up. So yeah. So
Yeah.
but because you mentioned he did this like after he leaves therapy. So I'm kind of wondering if he was doing some deeper work and got poked around with some things, and so was kind of doing some slippery behaviors and then lying about it. So to me, it'd be really interesting to have him. I'm curious, I'd bring it back to the therapist and go, this is what happened, and
Right.
so that you can look back at what was being talked about and why
maybe it's slippery behavior. Maybe it was actually just a casual extra long drive and didn't realize that the drive was actually therapeutic, and then was embarrassed it took so long to get home. Like, I mean, there's so many possibilities, but it could have been slippery behavior. Great, let's talk about it. But I would say, let's figure out why that happened and why we didn't tell the truth about it. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to bring to therapy.
Yeah. Okay, so there's two questions. I have been sober for over 2 years now from porn and the lies and deceit that come with it. During my recovery and when I was trying to keep my marriage of 14 years together, I was willing to take on certain labels she would call me to create safety with my wife, such as abuser, narcissist, it's all my fault, etc. Now she has asked for a divorce and we are getting divorced. How can I move out of those labels with her, as she still uses those labels while we communicate? Do I tell her that I don't agree with these labels and you need to stop calling me that? that's huge. That's, how do I have boundaries around that as somebody? Yeah.
Man, I struggle with the labels. I see it a lot. I hear people use them. And to answer the question, I do think you will need to let her know, hey, I know that you see me in a certain way, but it hurts when you tell me that I'm an abuser or a narcissist. And I know that you're just trying to figure out how to explain the pain that I've caused or that I've impacted on you. And I think you can say, look, if you call me a narcissist or an abuser, like, I'm going to let you know that that hurts, and I'm going to ask you to stop. And then it's you trying to figure out, remember, boundaries are just needs. And so if you pay attention to your needs, what are your needs? Do you just need to point out every time, hey, just a reminder, that feels like name calling. Can you please not do that? Right? And if you just do that every time it happens, maybe she'll change and she won't use those labels. Maybe you say, hey, just FYI, we're having a conversation. If you, say, call me a label more than 3 times, then I'm just going to say, hey, I got to go. We'll talk about this later. And so then you count it up 3 times and then say, hey, I got to go. Well, let's talk about this later. Right? Like, I don't know exactly what your need is. You need to explore that. Be careful not to apply a boundary because Matt said, start thinking about what you actually need in those situations. It might just be as simple as you saying, hey, you're calling me a label again. It feels like name calling. I'd appreciate it if you didn't use that term. That's not helping me in my recovery. So I think it's a very valid concern. I don't know that it's helpful, whether you were to stay married or get a divorce. Like, I don't think those labels are helpful. I try not to use them on here, even when I'll say someone's struggling with an addiction rather than calling somebody an addict. I could be better at saying somebody's struggling with betrayal. Because the thing is that these are the things we're struggling. You aren't a betrayed partner. That doesn't define you for the rest of your life. However, you are a partner who has been betrayed. And so it's real easy just to say betrayed partner, right? You are struggling with an addiction. It's real easy to say you're an addict. But I think that even though we may carry some of those traits or experiences, it isn't always helpful to apply the label or to do name calling. And I think if you lean into her with some empathy and you say to her, look, I know I've hurt you. I know that I've had some narcissistic tendencies. Nobody who struggles with an addiction that I can think of doesn't have narcissistic tendencies, if that makes sense. No doubt that some of your behaviors have felt abusive. Own those. Own your impact on her. Validate her. And at the same time, tell her the name calling doesn't work for me. Let's try and, can you tell me you felt abused instead of calling me an abuser? That sort of thing. Tell me what your thoughts are on that, Tammy.
Oh, when you said yes, the behaviors, I always go to that. Yes, the behaviors, and every addict has narcissistic traits because we are self-centered and self-focused. We are all about hanging on to that addictive behavior. That's it, at all costs to ourselves and everyone else. And yes, I mean, we get people that say, I'm the offender, I'm the abuser. And I'm like, well, offender has certain legal, connotations to it. And if you are a sex offender, then, that's a very different category than, so it's complicated. And I think these labels have gotten applied, and it's different to say my behaviors, while I was acting out, were hurtful, abusive, self-centered, all of those things. Absolutely. I'm working to be a different person. But if I'm just an abuser, there's very little room to go, and it's adding to the shame, which, shame is an easy place for addicts to wallow if they choose to. So it's like constantly having to fight harder, but yeah, the behaviors, hurtful, painful, like offensive, abusive, sure, behaviors. But that doesn't mean that person is an abuser or offender. And in any relationship, can the lion's share of it be on the behaviors that you exhibited, and as a result, sure. But in any relationship, it's problematic within the two, because there are lots of people that heal from this. So if people are truly committed to it, there can be a path. Again, not criticizing, but like, I understand it is what it is, and I would really, healthy boundaries for you. And I was thinking, Matt, so okay, so you say, hey, you're really hurting me, and what if she says, good, I'm glad because you've hurt me, what would you say? No, seriously, like, I've heard that kind of stuff. So if she goes, good, you deserve to be hurt because you hurt me so badly, do you have any thoughts for how, what he could, how he could extricate himself or whatever?
Yeah, an empathetic response is would be, you know what, I really did hurt you, and it makes me sad that you want to hurt me back, but I understand why you would want to. I'm just not, I don't think that's going to be beneficial for both of us. I think you're going to feel bad for hurting me, and I'm going to feel bad for being hurt, and I'm not sure that it's going to help us progress. But at the same time, I hurt you badly, and I think it's common that people hurt back when they're hurt.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's probably how I would respond. Did that answer the question, Tammy?
That's very helpful. Yeah, no, I appreciate it, because I was like, I mean, honestly, I've heard that. Good, you deserve to be hurt. And so I was like, well, kind of nice to have something to plan for. So, okay, not sure if this is the place for this question, but I could use some words of reason. Sometimes I hyper focus on the past and so badly want to know if the women my husband acted out with were more attractive to him than me. He always explains that it doesn't work that way in his mind, but I still feel like he knows if they were or weren't, and just doesn't want to tell me. Could you help bring some clarity to this?
I will absolutely. I think this is a perfect place to ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about what your brain is doing. Your brain is trying to make sense of the trauma. And unfortunately, I think what your brain is doing, because I'm not entirely positive, I'd have to sit down and talk with you, but like, typically what I see in this situation is your brain is trying to make sense of it by figuring out, well, if they were more attractive than me, no wonder why he acted out. And if I'm going to tell you, he's a smart man for telling you that it doesn't work that way, because it doesn't work that way. And I'll give you a good example. I don't know if this is helpful, but I remember years ago when Tiger Woods got caught in his sexual compulsivity. When I looked at his wife, Elin, I think it was her name. She's gorgeous. She's absolutely beautiful. But then I looked at some of his acting out partners and I thought, whoa, they aren't nearly as attractive. And so you have to understand, it really isn't about attraction from the way that we think about attraction. Was he more attracted to them than you? I will tell you right now, yes, in some ways, he was more attracted to them than you. Let's talk about why. What he was attracted to was sexual acting out without any emotional connection whatsoever. He was looking for potentially acting out without any baggage, right? He wanted to have his cake and eat it too, in that sense. But at the same time, it didn't work. Right? Attraction, most likely you're focused on physical attraction, appearance, that sort of thing. And he was attracted to an easy fix to a complicated problem. You don't get an easy fix to a complicated problem. That doesn't exist. You have a complicated fix, an expensive fix, meaning all the therapy you guys are going to have to do, to a complicated problem, which is all of his trauma and other issues that he's had going on in his life, and the trauma that he's now inflicted to you. So no, it isn't about attractiveness, but I don't blame you one bit for trying to make sense of it. But the truth is, it doesn't make sense. Most people I talk to have said, I acted out with people who I'd never want to hang out with, be with, spend my life with, ever, because it doesn't work that way. All they really wanted usually was a quick fix in the moment to numb their pain. So I don't know, Tammy, how's my response on that?
No, I agree. And Scott, our colleague who teaches the sex addiction or porn addiction 101, but I'm going to use the sex addiction 101 course. He'll ask the guys, was the person you interacted with, whether it's an affair partner or a sex worker or whatever, was prettier than your wife? No. Smarter than your wife? No. Funnier than your wife? No. I mean, like, goes down the list. No. It is the availability. It is, and if with an affair
Availability
partner,
without consequence, right? Like,
well, perceived without consequence.
exactly, right? Oh, totally. It's
or the high risk, the intensity. Dr. Rob talks all the time. It's an intensity rather than intimacy, and so I'm seeking that intensity where my partner is connection and intimacy. Ooh, that's kind of scary.
Totally. And so you asked, can I bring some clarity to it? Let me know if that brings clarity or whatever other questions come up, because I have a lot of compassion for your thought process and wanting to make sense of it. And I actually think it's a beautiful question. I think it's really good.
And it gets asked all the time. Like, so that is,
all the time.
I want to normalize, and it is why we talk about, with formal therapeutic disclosure, you aren't giving specific details, because it gets stuck in partners' heads where they're going, oh, it was, this body type or this, hair color or whatever, it is. And so getting the information in a way that is helpful for you, but not adding extra trauma. And like, I hear all the time, I can't get this out of my head. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that. So, okay. So the next question is the CSAT, my partner's, let's see, the CSAT that my partner and I go to have recommended that we don't go to couples therapists for the first while until we get a foundation from our individual therapy for the time first. Perhaps this is because of our possibly only rowing with 1 oar. We are only a month in, so having met with a CSAT, but we are both dealing with acknowledging his addiction as an SA for the past few years. What can we do in the early days to get this ball rolling? We are dealing with a lot of overwhelming and incredible amount of stress.
Great question. So there are different trains of thoughts on this. And it's hard because I don't know who your CSAT is. Even if you told me who it is, I may not know them, right? But I am much more couples focused. And there really was an older train of thought that basically said couples work is not meant to be done early on in recovery. And there's more work coming out now that shows that it can be beneficial. And so that your CSAT might be looking at it from kind of an older train of thought. Your CSAT might know you guys well enough to know that it's not going to be beneficial. But keep in mind, you have the ability to tell your CSAT, we would like to work with a couples therapist and see if there's some things we could do to get more connected. And if that couples therapist says that it's not helping, or we realize it's not helping, then we're going to stop doing it until we're ready. So I don't think there's anything wrong with consulting with a couples therapist, especially if the couples therapist is also a CSAT. That's me. I'm not saying you can use me, because I don't see anybody outside of the state of Arizona because I'm not licensed anywhere else yet. But like, there's been times where I'll start seeing a couple and I'm like, we can actually make some good progress here. However, there may be some limitations, and I'll start working with them and see that it really helps them. I do think some couples work early on can be beneficial, but the couples therapist needs to know what they're working with. It might be most couples therapists that don't have the training and addiction work might be like, oh yeah, I can help you. And it's like, I don't know that I would go there. I would find a couples therapist who's familiar with addiction work, who's familiar with trauma from the betrayal and that sort of thing, before just jumping into couples therapy work. I would almost encourage you. I'd rather see you follow the advice of your CSAT, who knows your situation, then go find some random couples therapist who doesn't understand addiction work. That could be scary. But if you said, hey, I found another CSAT who also does couples work, we'd like to try a few, and just tell your current CSAT about it, and then basically have them coordinate, because you might be able to get some good work done. But definitely I would do it only in those considerations and being open with your current CSAT about it. I know that may sound confusing, but I hope that actually clarifies.
No, while I was tracking, but so I put in the chat, we have like work groups for each of you. Those are very good components that will help you. You know, if the only thing, I'm glad you're here, but if the only thing that you guys are really doing is working with your individual therapist, that's the long haul. And I think there is a timing thing. Now, I do know that some people go, but there's a specific, like, here's our goals of going to, you know, of doing this, because we can't even have a conversation together. Like, you know, well, then good, go negotiate. Like, here's how we interact with each other. If there's some specific things of what you're looking to do, talk to your individual therapist. Again, a conjoint session, maybe once a month, you know, with the two of them could help you get that, or a couples therapist. But again, ideally, they've got the ability to talk about what, you know, what they're seeing, both in individual and, you know, with a couples therapist. You know, it's like a medical team. You've got a team then, and you want to make sure nobody's off doing their own thing, you know, which is not recommended with, you know, with the individual work that you're doing. You are so early in. Please hear me. Like, there's hope, you know, but you know, we talk about like it's, and there's no magic and like you hit a magic number and then, but you know,
Right.
Getting recovery is really, and this is across, you know, any of the addictions. You know, you can go to AA and it's about 2 years before you have a solid, you know, foundation. So while that sounds terrifying, you know, to a partner, here's the deal. Like, the acting out, the ability to dissociate, you know, probably happened before age 10. So if somebody's 30, they've got 20 years of, you know, these patterns, you know, at least. So it's going to take time, and it isn't going to be instantaneous. And I know, as much as everybody's looking for safety, there are things you can do. The faster he has a 3-circle plan, so that you know what there is, the more, you know, 12-step meetings, our online drop-in groups, the more, you know, if he's seeing his individual therapist, maybe they've got a group. I mean, the more work he's doing, the more action you're seeing, the more support you have, you know, it does make a difference. So hopefully that helps too. This was FYI, his alternate routes were not only after therapy, so it's not connected. Okay. Well, yeah.
Good clarity.
Okay. Yeah. Am I controlling by asking my partner not to go to the beach or hang out with certain friends, like single friends who I believe may be enabling? My partner also struggles with cannabis use and has hid smoking weed and cigarettes at work. I'm not sure how to establish boundaries around his addict behaviors. This causes a lot of conflict. Sending him to sleep out on the couch if he acts out feels like I'm giving him a break from conflict, and he has the privacy to act out. It feels like punishing a kid, and I don't feel like that's a boundary. You're right. So Matt, what do you got?
Well, I love this question, but I'm going to pounce on this a little bit. And this may sound harsh, but I want you to stick with me long enough to know I'm not trying to hurt you. Are you controlling by asking your partner not to go to the beach or hang out with certain friends, like single friends who you believe are maybe enabling? Yes, you are controlling. Let's talk about being controlling. Control is something we try to do when we're feeling afraid, when we're feeling scared, worried, nervous. And we try to do that because we don't want to see somebody make bad choices. We don't want to get hurt, right? Like, there's the reason we control is to try and prevent more pain, heartbreak, them hurting themselves, them slipping back into an unhealthy lifestyle or whatever. And so I think we have to worry. I don't like it when a partner's like, you're so controlling. It's like, how about you're so scared? Like, that would be way better. Start being like, you're so scared, right? Don't label them as controlling. Talk about the emotion they're feeling about why they're controlling. That's what's way more important. They're controlling because they're afraid. They're controlling. Okay, I'll say you're controlling because you love him. It's not healthy. It's not working. But to be honest, it sounds like his behaviors are a little bit screwy. I don't know what other word to come up with there. Like, I'm a little bit nervous about his behaviors. And so you should be nervous about his behaviors. And I tell you, when you said sending him to sleep out on the couch feels like giving him a break from conflict, I can't stress this enough. Spouses, betrayed partners, and I'll even say partners who are struggling with addiction, stop giving your spouse consequences. Consequences should not be happening. You are not punishing your spouse. You should be giving your spouse a need of yours. You don't have boundaries around his addictive behaviors. You have needs around your addictive behaviors. If your need is, I need some space because you hurt me, can you go sleep on the couch? It doesn't matter whether you're giving him a break from the conflict or not. You need space because he did something that required you to need space. And so whether it's a break or not, it doesn't matter. He's sleeping on the couch because that's your need, not your way of punishing him and making sure that he knows that he's been a bad boy and he should never do this again. So the truth is, it's not, I don't want you treating him like a kid, trying to teach him a lesson. That doesn't work. In fact, who wants to be married to a child, their child? Nobody. Nobody wants to have sex with their child. I shouldn't say that, but no healthy person, right? And so, I'm sorry. And so what I'm trying to say there is that focus more on what your needs are. Let him know what your needs are. Tell him, here's some behaviors that might help me with my need. Are you willing to help me by doing these behaviors to see if my need can get met? Right? Like he could stop going to the beach and stop hanging out with certain friends, and still your need isn't getting met. Right? But you could ask, can you try not going to the beach for a week, and let's see what that does for me? And let's see what that does for you. And let's have a conversation about it. Let's see what our needs are getting met, right? Your goal is need fulfillment. That's your main goal. His need fulfillment, your need fulfillment in healthy ways so that you guys can have a healthy relationship. So hopefully this helps a little bit. Like, I'm trying not to be harsh on you, but I really do want people to think about this as a much bigger concept. I think you're controlling because you love him, and I think you just don't know a better way. And so hopefully this gives you some insight. Tammy?
Yeah, boundaries are not punishment. It isn't, you did this, so therefore, you're going to go sleep on the couch or whatever. It is like, I can't, we're not, the gap in our trust is greater because these behaviors. So I need to take care of myself. I do this a lot. Like, I have a shield. Like, I need to take care of me, my physical, emotional, financial, I know, and spiritual. Like, I look at all of those areas and go, what do I need, for safety in those? And it's needs like, food and water and air, like, what are my needs around that? And I think journaling that could be helpful for you. It's like, when he does this, no, it's like, what do I need? And just know, he's an active addict. He's an active addiction. He will not be able to meet your needs. So how can you get those needs met? And I'm not saying go have an affair. I'm saying, how do you create a posse of friends around you that can be supportive? And I'm going to tell you a couple ways. I'm put in the chat. We have another betrayed partner, Prodependent work group starting August 23rd. And that we talk about healthy boundaries. We talk, from a prodependent lens, we talk about all of those things. You'll have, homework, but you'll have a plan and you'll have support. And those are all live facilitated. And I think that would be really helpful. I'm glad you're here. I really encourage you to join the drop-in groups where you're connecting with other people that are, are on this journey. And some of them are years in and they are really, have found a good solid path for themselves. And others are newer in all of this, and you still have an active addict, or so it's in all phases. So there's help and support for you to navigate this. But yes, having healthy boundaries is about you and your safety. And regardless of what he does or doesn't do, like, you can create safety for you within the framework. So, okay, next question. Oh, that helped bring some clarity. Thank you. I guess it's hard because he's to the point where if he ever slips or acts out, it's just looking at other women trying to get double takes, etc. It's been a while since the last time, but it still swarms in my mind. We live in a beach town, and I know most women here are just barely wearing anything. So it just makes me think that they have to be attractive enough to him to look in the first place. Sorry, I've been spiraling a little bit on this. I'm going to tell you, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, there's elder erotica there. I mean, like, it doesn't matter what they look like. I'm serious. Like, I was just like, well, of course somebody's going to be into grannies, it's but so it isn't like, a certain just body type or whatever, people have arousal templates. But on some level, what he does, what I hear is, gosh, you guys have made a lot of progress. And so I'm wondering if you can focus on taking care of you. And, he's got a plan, he's got a program, and it's for him to own up if he's doing something. Matt talked about 12-hour rule. I think 12 hours is great. Some people give 24 hours, but whatever it is, it maybe we need to go back and talk about that, like coming clean sooner helps. And I know that that's hurtful to you. We are human beings. We are going to notice, attractiveness and beauty, and it's difficult, but it's up to us to take care of ourselves and take care of, nobody else is responsible for my program. I am responsible for my program, and what I choose to do for it, and therefore for the good of my relationships, is my responsibility. It has consequences, and I understand it can be hurtful to others, but I want to have good relationships. I want to do what I need to do to be able to be, integrous in relationships with other people and show up. So
It's interesting because I had a thought about this one, because this is the one where she
yes.
said, about attraction, right? And I had a thought, and I'm trying to remember it, but it's interesting because I think so often we want to understand it. Well, first of all, I thought it was hilarious that you're shaming somebody's arousal template towards grannies. Like, that cracks me up. But
well, I'm not shaming. I'm saying
I know you are.
Like it isn't just like the 19-year-old gorgeous people. Yeah.
I'm giving you a hard time because I actually thought what you said was beautiful. When you get down to it, what's attractive to one person is totally unattractive to another. And so, what I see here is a woman in this case who really just wants to understand, like, probably several things. How do I show up for him so that I can meet his needs? And probably there's some insecurity going on here for you, in part because of what's happened to you. It wouldn't surprise me if man, most women I talk to have so much insecurity around their looks and their beauty. And it's sad. It's billions of dollars industry for women's looks. And it's funny, like, my wife even says it's unfair. Men get older and somehow they're more attractive when they get older, right? Like, and women have a much earlier prime according to our social belief system. And so, what's really going on, it sounds like, is that fear that you're never enough. And I'm going to challenge you that you're not enough, because that's not his issue. His issue and what he struggles with has to do with all of his internal problems and the way that he's learned and chosen to cope with them. He has to take ownership of his own recovery and figure out, like, that you're doing amazing and you're gorgeous and that he's in love with you. And I've actually said that even if a spouse isn't attractive to a partner, there's no excuse for acting out. You can have the most deformed, mutilated, like, awful looking spouse for whatever reason, and nobody would be, hopefully nobody healthy would say, oh yeah, I don't blame you for acting out because your spouse is really ugly. Like, the reality of it is you made a commitment, and your relational agreements within your relationship was only within the marriage. I'm making assumptions and judgments, but based on what you've said, that's what I'm assuming here. And so there is zero excuse for you to act out, for him to act out, for him to step outside the marriage. The only excuse is that he violated his commitments to you. And so it doesn't matter whether he's attracted to you or not. He needs to learn to figure out his issues, get those in a healthy place, and own them and honor them when he doesn't. And so there is no justification in any form for a person to act out, live an unhealthy life. We do it, and we got to own it and live up to it and make repair. But it wouldn't matter if you were horribly deformed and, by the world's standards, very ugly. It doesn't matter. There's no excuse for his behavior. My guess is you're not. But
well, and and we, I mentioned earlier, Scott will say, prettier, smarter, funnier. I mean, more caring, like the whole list. And it's always no, 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 no. So it isn't about, what's out there in the world, and we are more than the package we are wrapped in. I don't think I know the society wants to define us by how we look, but we are so much more and complex and interesting, and so I would invite you to be secure in who you are. He has a program to work. He has the support to be successful. I would invite you to, because I heard you say I'm in a little bit of a shaky place. What do you need to shore up your foundation so that you aren't feeling shaky? Because this is he's got his stuff. What do you need to do? I know lots of partners that go, what he does doesn't rock my boat anymore, because I've got the security of I'm doing my work. I've got my posse of people. I got people I can call, so, is it annoying? Sure. But does he have work to do? Yes. And I'm going to lean into the resources that I have. And as your good friend, Troy Love, says, we know that we're enough. We are enough for ourselves. And, and there are moments when addicts forget that. So
yeah, when I said you're not enough, I meant to satisfy the disaster of the addiction, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. No, yeah.
Right.
I don't want somebody to take a clip out of this and go, you are enough. Yeah.
You are. Matt told her she's not enough. I mean, it's like, you have to learn that you are enough, and that's hard for all of us. Yes.
And we have moments, like at me, like there's moments for all of us, but if we lean back into, take a breath and go, what's really going on right now? And how can I get support so that I'm not feeling, that frayed, of the emotions and everything else. So we are out of time. Thank you, Matt. Thank you all for all the great questions. And oh shoot, somebody brought one in. You got one more minute. No more questions this weekend. Thank you so much for this webinar, all your advice and wisdom. How do I take care of my needs when I'm so damn angry? I'm not even sure what my needs are anymore. I know I need to sleep instead of staying up late, having a big conversation about my addict's behaviors. It doesn't work. Is it changing anything? You're getting no sleep. So I know I need self-confidence instead of being insecure. I want to have a family, but 2 years is a long time to give someone to see if he can recover and build trust again. I need to move forward and feel safe and secure. I'm not sure what needs I have in this relationship, and I feel so disjointed from who I am and the path we were on before this bomb blew up. Again, Betrayed Partner Work Group starts August 23rd. It will be so helpful. But Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because, to be honest, jump back into our next webinar, and we're not doing it on the 25th, if I remember right.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I won't be back until the 8th. So that's like a month. But I mean, I would say, let's talk. I would say bring back to your next webinar, what are you doing with your anger? How are you displaying it? Because if it's rage, your anger is not going to go away. And so you need to find healthy ways to express your anger. I would agree I think some of the worst advice ever is don't go to bed angry. I would say go to bed and get a good night's sleep and revisit it when you both have had some good sleep. I wouldn't visit a conversation on an empty stomach either. You guys need to make sure you've got food in
Well,
you.
or with somebody who's, high on cannabis, it's like,
Oh, totally.
it's gonna not go well, so.
Yeah, they say, I mean, I had somebody come in high on cannabis and said that I was therapy Jesus, I was like, cool, right? But your therapy session is completely wasted because we aren't going to get anywhere. So, I'd come back to the next webinar. Tell me what you're doing with your anger, what's working, what's not working. But I don't blame you. You're in a rough spot. And yes, lots of people have been able to rebuild trust and have a healthy relationship. And at the same time, I've also seen lots of people end their relationship and move on, right? I don't
And
have
that's
it,
okay.
and
Yeah.
that's okay. It really is. I'm not the arbiter of whether people should stay together or not. So honestly, come back to the next webinar and let's talk more about your anger, what's working, what's not working, that sort of thing. Because I honestly don't even know that I could do it justice in the fact that we're already over time.
Exactly. So, all right. Bye, everyone.
I'll see you guys on the 8th.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.